Welcome to GamePoch's Roundtable. I'm HollowsBastion.
And I'm MystikDan.
And today we're going to be discussing what makes the perfect game. So we went ahead and we broke it down into 5 major aspects. Yes, we understand that there's a heck of a lot more aspects to what goes into the perfect game. However, for time's sake, for energy's sakes, we just went ahead and broke it down to 5. This is not in any specific order, mainly because we couldn't really agree on what's more important than the other one. So this, again, this is not in any specific order whatsoever. So on to our first main aspect.
The first point I want to talk about we both agreed on, and that is story. Story is something that involves plot, it involves characters and character development, it involves the setting, all of that stuff, you know, in a very cerebral manner. So it's the stuff that you think about when you think this is what happens in that world and when we play through all that. And for me, I feel like story it's not the most important part, but without it, it's going to be really difficult to make it a great game. Story doesn't have to be particularly complex, although that can very much be to its benefit. But as long as you've got something that's adding to the experience, that can really help give context and make it mean a whole lot more. So, like for example, if we were just doing some old arcade game where we don't care about what's going on, it might be kind of fun to ditty around and play with a little bit, but it's not going to have a real lasting impact. It's not going to really impress itself on you. But the games where you've got even the most basic of plots, where you've got someone who's trying to invade Dracula's castle to try to save the surrounding countryside, or you've got an unlikely plumber trying to go and rescue a princess from a crazy dragon lizard. At least if you have something, that's going to make more of an impact, and it's going to allow you to kind of let your imagination go wild, at worst. And at best, it's going to give you something really interesting to think about and to really remember that experience that you went through, where you actually defeated this bad guy or this creature that you've been looking forward to fighting this whole story, this whole adventure, and you finally get to take them down. It can really make a big difference. So I feel like that's a very important aspect.
I agree with you 100% on that. I think the most epic games have the best story behind them. Something that can draw people in, you know, and just keep them going for hours. Like, what's going to happen next? How is the hero going to come out on top? Also, there's a lot of emotional aspects to a story too that people can relate with. An example would be Kingdom Hearts. So Kingdom Hearts, for me, means a lot. There's the themes of Kingdom Hearts is like friendship and fighting the darkness in your heart and things like that. And whenever I was going through Kingdom Hearts the first time, it really touched me and it helped me get through a lot of dark times. And it was just, it's one of my favorite games because it still resounds with me. And it kind of has that nostalgic factor to it as well, because it's like, oh yeah, and it pulled me out of this deep dark hole, you know, whatever. But also, you know what's also excellent in the Kingdom Hearts series is music.
Yep.
Which is our second aspect, music in a game. So music's extremely important. It's just as important as the story to me. I love music, Dan loves music, and it helps you get invested in the moment. Going into a boss battle and you have that boss music, that boss theme going, and it gets your blood pumping. Legend of Zelda series, the first time that I went fought any boss battle, actually, just that boss fanfare, it's just like, ooh, that's great. I actually even put that as my ringtone for whenever my employer calls me. just so that way I'm ready to go.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's true. Every boss that I've had since 6 years ago, maybe.
Well, they're called a boss for a reason. Right?
I know. But no, so it puts the player in the moment. And I think that's just as important as a lasting impression like a story does. Yeah,
and we both agree with this. Music is so key to making a truly great game. If you have a game that's really just only sound effects, it's going to be maybe fun at best while you're playing it, but it's not going to really make as much of an impact on you while you're playing it as if you've got this stirring performance of music happening underneath to really drive home the emotional experience they want you to have. We all understand this, that when we have music going on with anything that we're doing, it can change the feel of things, it can enhance the feel of things, it just really makes a big difference. But for me, it also is super important because it can help make a lasting impact that you remember forever. And anytime you hear something that even just sounds like what that music was, never mind if you actually hear the music itself, it'll bring back all of that. The nostalgia will be very strong and make a huge, allow you to remember all those wonderful feelings that you felt, the sadness or the fear, the anxiety or the joy or the crazy stress of trying to get through a really tough part, or the emotional sadness of going through something really touching or stirring. It makes a huge difference. And we saw a huge difference with Koji Kondo and the music of Super Mario Bros., the original. It made such a lasting impact that everybody now knows the Mario music. It reverberated through the ages, and I don't think it's ever gonna go away. And if it had just been subpar to meh, we probably would have never given it another thought, but because he took so much time to not only make sure that the music matched the pacing and the feel and the atmosphere of the game and your character moving through things, it also was just so well written, and he continued on using similar motifs throughout different parts of the game, that it stuck with you and it made the experience more memorable, more meaningful, and in a way more artistic. I think that's one of the things that's so special about video games, is that it's not just a single faceted art form. You've got the picture and the music and sound and the control and the entire experience all together. All of those, any and all together, can be an artistic experience that to me makes video gaming, and I hated the opinion Ebert spread with this. I absolutely feel like video games can be an art form, and an incredible art form at that. So music is incredibly important, and you could still make a great game with music being lackluster. Well, a good game, but the best games are going to have phenomenal music, and you're gonna see all games nowadays, they put in a lot of time to make sure their music is at least great, if not phenomenal. But then when we go from there to the next aspect, this was another one that we both agreed on, and this is almost so basic and simple, it seems silly to emphasize it, but it's crucially important to talk about gameplay. What's the point of a video game if the gameplay is not the central focus? And for me, I actually feel like it's the #1 most important part. Everything else, it kind of gets a little wishy-washy on how important it is compared to others, but I've definitely come to realize over the years that the gameplay is the most important. And when I talk about gameplay, for me, that means the controls, the moves of your characters, the different abilities that they have, the level designs, the enemy designs and movements, and how they interact with each other. All of that goes into the gameplay. If your gameplay is so well done, it's gonna be to the point where someone's gonna be like, oh, if they're sitting on the couch watching their friend play, they're gonna be itching, going, I really wanna hold that controller and make the character do that stuff because it looks so fun to do that. And that's so crucial. And for me, I loved Xenosaga because it had amazing story, it had amazing graphics and music. But when I realized that I wasn't enjoying the gameplay very much because it was so hard and it was drawn out and kind of frustrating to play through, for me at least, and for most people, I've gathered that that's the general sentiment. You get to the point where you realize that the gameplay is kind of the you grind through to get to the next cutscene, because that's why you're really playing, because it's so great to watch. But if you were to cut out all the gameplay and find that what's left is what you actually enjoyed about your game, that's not a good game. And that's something that would have been better done as a movie or a show or something. If your game is not fun to play, to me, it's not a good game. And that is so crucially important.
It really is. So another good example of gameplay being so important, rather than, you know, sure, you can have a great story and things like that, but if your gameplay is not on point, you know, it's not going to make the mark. Rocket League. Rocket League has no story whatsoever. You're just driving a car and you're hitting a ball into a goal and running into other players and blowing them up. That's it.
Yep.
And it's so ridiculously fun. I don't know what it is, but it's so easy that anybody can pick it up and, you know, figure out how to play it, but it's also so difficult to master. You have people that can fly through the air like a rocket. Rocket League. You can fly through the air like a rocket and hit that ball and it immediately goes into the goal, and I have no idea how they do it because as soon as I jump up into the air, I'm going the opposite direction. But it's still so fun. As a novice, I have a blast, and it's so easy to just pick up, play for 15 minutes, and then, you know, go to work or do whatever you have to do. And I love it. But another thing that's so excellent about Rocket League, sure, it has awesome music as well. The art style, the visual art style, which is actually our #4 point, or aspect, excuse me, is the art style. Art style is the first thing that I think people see. Well, literally, it's the first thing that you see, but it's the first thing that you notice. Sure, it might sound great and things like that, but if the art style is not there and it's just kind of bland, then you just kind of lose interest in it. A great example of a fantastic art style, Okami, for the PS2. Beautiful game. Great gameplay and music and everything like that, and story as well, but mind-blowingly beautiful game. And it's not because it had the best graphics, it's because the art style was so unique, so pure, so beautiful. I cannot sing its praises high enough. I think that's the most beautiful game there is.
So artsy, such beauty. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, we completely agree on that, and it's an interesting point. We want to distinguish this between art style and the graphical design versus the actual just pure graphical power. There's a big difference between just having a high polygon count and texture resolution and all that kind of stuff versus a visual, graphical, artistic style. So for example, just two games from the same series that I think make a great contrast to this. Ocarina of Time in Zelda versus Wind Waker in Zelda. Ocarina of Time, when you look at the old graphics, hasn't really aged all that great as far as visual fidelity and all that stuff. And it wowed us all when it first came out because it was stunning and atmospheric, the lighting was cool, and it was beautiful. And it was the best graphical power that we had been able to see to that point. But nowadays it looks awful, and when you play the 3DS remake, a lot of people, when they first play that, especially if they haven't played the original Nintendo 64 version in a very long time, they might play that and go, yeah, this is... What remake? This looks exactly the way I remember it. But if you were to play that and look at the original Nintendo 64 graphical quality, you'd be like, oh wow, that looks horrible! Because Grezzo, the guys that Nintendo teamed up with to make the port, were able to still capture the artistic style, but increase the graphical fidelity to make it look better in the modern age, while not sacrificing the way it looked artistically. And that's why that's so important, because when you look at Wind Waker, this is why I don't feel like the HD remake was really all that necessary for Wind Waker, because when you look at Wind Waker, its graphical style was cel-shaded and meant to be very simple and bright colors. And today, even the GameCube version of that game still looks gorgeous. Yeah, you don't have really the great widescreen and the high resolution, which is a shame, but still, regardless, looking at those in-game graphics, it looks beautiful. It's timeless. And it was because they were able to find an art style that matched what their hardware could handle, but that just, it made all this sort of sense. And it's similar to Okami, like Ben said, where it looks beautiful and can last the test of time. It doesn't just start looking bad because they were more focused on pushing the graphical power and trying to get as many polygons as possible, and all those textures, and all the lighting, and all the VSync, and whatever the crap you enhance when you're doing all those PC settings. Those are great, those are fun, awesome, but that's gonna... And that's why we like to focus on that rather than graphics. We really do mean graphics, but the art style is more important. Because if you've got a game that looks trashy and hideous, even if everything else is phenomenal, the gameplay is wonderful, the story is great, and the music's awesome, if it looks terrible, it's gonna be hard to kind of play through it. But then the last main aspect of video games, we actually have different points that we feel are important. So we're gonna kind of branch out a little bit here. And for me, my aspect was not easy to really nail down with a single word or term. So for me, I'll just describe what I'm talking about and we'll call it good. For me, if the game doesn't have a real strong theme or moral message or philosophy or political message or some kind of emotional involvement, you know, to go along with the morality, it's going to be missing out on something big. And that's different to me from just story. Story to me is basically just the plot and the characters and what they go through. That's really what the story is, and you know, and the environment as well. While if you can have all of that and not really have a strong theme or morality or philosophical message or political message to go along with it, and that can really be missing. So for me, that's why I love Nintendo games. I've been a Nintendo fanboy since I could crawl. You watch GAMEpoch, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I love them to death, and I will always be a fanboy. And they will always be games that I adore. But it's gonna be really hard for Nintendo games to be my favorites because they always are lacking that admittedly controversial and polarizing element, because it's really impossible to kind of share that without driving people's opinions apart. But they don't have a real theme or a message they're trying to impart upon you. They're just giving you an amazing experience that's really kind of cutting that part out. Meanwhile, I always really fell in love with the role-playing games and, you know, games that really have a very strong thematic message to them. And so a lot of my favorite games are games like BioShock 1 and Infinite, and Talos Principle, and Soma, and The Witness and Braid, these games that have a really strong and really powerful morality or theme to them. And the Final Fantasies, of course, that all have this, you know, strong emotional overtone that goes along with the plot. It's not just a simple thing. It's like some of the Final Fantasies are about dealing with death and sadness, or about dealing with being alone, and all this kind of stuff that really makes a human impact on you. Or these games like BioShock or Talos Principle that really make you think about things. And I think we have to be cautious with those, because you don't want to just have a game that is trying to tell a message that's like a really like propaganda piece. You know, it would be really frustrating if you played a game and the whole time they're just going, you know, communism good, capitalism bad, and you're just like, why am I playing this? But that was what I appreciate about the subtlety of BioShock, where a lot of people may, on the surface, play that game and be like, oh, these people are just trying to say that free market is bad and blah, blah, blah. But when you actually play it and you hear all the audio logs and you understand the story and the characters and everything that they did and why they did what they did, and you understand everything that happened, it's actually not that simple. And so for me, the takeaway was not this purely free market, like, haven failed just because, well, yeah, that's going to fail, it's just doomed. But rather, I think they posit the question, did it fail because it's doomed to fail? Or did it fail because the characters involved were not true to the ideals of that system, and as a result, that's why it failed? And that's the thought-provoking stuff about those kind of games that I love. Talos Principle's the same way, where you're talking with an AI just trying to get an administrative password to the library so you can read more files or something. At least that's what you think. But when you're going through this test to see if you qualify for an administrative account, it's asking, okay, so what do you think makes a person? And you're like, okay, but what if a ball of iron is somehow aware of itself? Does that count as being a person? Or not? And why not? What about a person who gets a lobotomy? Are they no longer a person? It just like makes you go, I don't know. What do I think? I don't know what I think anymore. And that's brilliant. That is going to really push you as a human being to feel what you really feel and think what you really think, and try to ask yourself questions and experience these emotional experiences that humanity goes through. And to me, that is part of what makes a game so amazing and great, is that it can make you experience that and question your own relationship with that part of the rest of humanity. And that is so crucial to me in order to make it the best kind of a game.
I'm gonna actually agree with you on that. I don't think it's as important as my aspect, but to kind of piggyback on you on that as well, first time that I went through the Mass Effect series, right? Mm-hmm. They put you in this position where you have to make impossible decisions. Spoiler alert, in Mass Effect 3, spoiler alert, in Mass Effect 3, you literally have to decide, do you want to cure this race of Krogans so that way they can go ahead and reproduce and possibly be a huge threat to the galaxy because they're just so war hungry? Or do you want to go ahead and side with the Solarians, who are the ones that caused the genophage, the disease that the Krogans carry, and get their support for this major war of survival that you're trying to win? Again, another decision that you have to make is if the robotic race of the Geth are actually alive, where the Quarians, their creators, say no, they're not, they're just tools. However, you have both a Geth and a Quarian in your party, and the Geth is asking you, does this unit have a soul? It's like, of course you do! you see this. You know, it's impossible decisions that you have to make, and I love that.
That's awesome.
Whenever a game can do that, and I will agree that that is an important aspect, and it's a very fun aspect. However, my aspect that I think is in my top 5 is community. So think about the Dark Souls series. Okay, it has a great atmosphere, great setting, great gameplay. Great everything. The story is there, but you have to be able to piece it all together. And what's so excellent about the community is that everybody helps to figure out this amazing story. I suck at piecing stories together. I wouldn't be able to do it at all. I'll just be walking around, oh, that's a big giant wolf. I wonder why it's right here. And it's because of the community that I find out that, oh, spoiler alert, oh, this wolf is guarding the grave of its former master that it was so loyal to. And it's just trying to fend you off. It's not some mindless beast that's there. It's there. It has a soul.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And I would never have caught that if it wasn't for the community. I remember another example. I was in middle school whenever Shadow of the Colossus came out, and I didn't really know about it a heck of a lot. I never played Ico. I didn't look at IGN or anything like that. I was just there, play games, whatever was put in front of me, there it goes.
Yeah.
Well, I had a friend came out and was like, oh, dude, you need to play Shadow of the Colossus because this is awesome, and you fight things that are this big, and you're like this big, and it's so epic, and it's great. You need to play it. You need to play it. I was like, whatever. Okay, I'll look at it. Sometime. I actually got it for my birthday or Christmas. It was a long time ago. I can't remember. I got it as a gift, and oh my gosh, I got so hooked. And if it wouldn't have been for this guy telling me about it, I would not have known about it at all. So whenever I go back to school, I'm like, oh my god, did you see the thing? It was like this big, and I don't know how the frick to kill it because I'm like this big, and my sword's like a little toothpick compared to the thing, and the thing, and the thing. And we just kept feeding on each other's hype, I guess you could say. And it just made the game that much better, having people that I can go to and get excited with it, that also got excited with it. And that's what I really remember is the community. From Dark Souls, this example is Shadow of the Colossus. Whenever I think back on the game, sure, I think about, wow, this was a great masterpiece. But then I can't help but also think about the people that I surrounded myself with whenever I was playing that game. So to me, it's great.
And there's another thing that I want to add to that. Community is something that, I mean, as human beings, we're very social creatures, and so it makes perfect sense that would be so important to so many people. And we've always had a community with gaming as far back as we can go. Arcades is where things really started to get very interesting, where people would gather around machines and there would be competitions. They started having, like, you know, people trying to get to the top world records and all this kind of stuff. And then eventually we got to the point where we were able to play at home with people on the couch. We'd be playing 2-player games, and we would have online play come along eventually later with some of the Blizzard games, Diablo and StarCraft and Warcraft, and then the MMORPGs that just exploded, starting with Ultima Online and EverQuest.
Hey, I love that game.
I know you did.
I'm just saying.
And then eventually World of Warcraft, which just exploded the whole thing. And then even with very small and simple things, like Pokemon is the perfect example. Back when it was first just a Game Boy game, there was enough incentive because of the way it was baked into the system that they would have 2 games with different sets of monsters exclusive to one or the other. And so right there was incentive to just buy a quick little link cable, go on to school and find other people and go, hey, I've got these things that I know you might want, and I really want things that only you could have, that you could give me. Can we trade? And there was all that involvement, and people could fight and battle each other. And now it's gotten to the point where look where Pokemon Go has brought us, where we've got huge stampedes of people going to Central Park to find a, what was it, Vaporeon or something like that. It's just insane what kind of crazy awesome stuff that just Pokemon by itself has been able to get us to do. And now we've got esports and huge community things and SGDQ, which is awesome. I mean, the community is no small thing, and if your game is going to be able to effectively tap into that, you're going to have a much more likely hit on your hands. I completely agree with that.
So that pretty much wraps up our first round table. To go over the 5 points one more time, the first one that we went through was story, second one was music, third we agreed was gameplay, fourth was visual art style, and number 5 we kind of disagreed on it a little bit. Dan was more of the morality choices, the philosophical parts of the game, whereas mine was on community. So, thank you very much for sticking it out this far. What are your top 5 aspects? Let us know in the comment section below, you know, right by that like button. You know?
It's not far.
It's a click away.
Just go like this.
Again, thank you guys so much for coming check us out, and I hope that we get to see you again.
I'm looking forward to you guys being here when this table comes around again. Yeah, you see what I did there?
I did.
See that?
I saw it. Okay. Later, everyone.
All right, bye.